I'm David McCarter. I'm a Microsoft MVP, award-winning developer, blah, blah, blah. There's all my handles and things like that. I've got a lot to go over in half an hour. I could probably easily talk about this for 3 hours. Let's get going. Oh, yeah. And this is my 26th year speaking in public. So I started almost 26 years ago, and I'm still doing it for some reason. So here's what we're going to talk about really quick today. Kind of why I'm passionate about this subject, bringing fun to speaking, building a brand really quick, and then my number one tip that I've never shared public. So you guys are going to be the first one to hear my number one tip that I try to instill to beginner speakers when I meet them for the first time at a conference. So let's do opening act. So speaking facts. So these are some quick facts according to me, right? And so to me, speaking is fun, right? Not in the beginning. I was terrified, just like most of you probably were. I was terrified. Speaking was the last thing I ever wanted to do. But now I try to bring fun in it. I try to bring my personality into it. I try to bring in things I really like in my world, like music and photography and graphic arts and things like that. So I do those things mostly just because it makes it fun for me and hopefully for my audience too. So building a brand is important. I'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit. And the other thing is speaking expands your knowledge, right? I think a lot of speakers out there think that, I'm there to, teach them. Well, you learn through this process too, because, a lot of us want to go up on stage and know what the heck we're talking about. So it forces us, to learn the subject at least good enough to answer questions, especially live questions. So I've found through my career, running a user group for 20 years, speaking there, speaking for 26 years, teaching at a university for 18 years, all these things has really expanded my knowledge. And I think I'm a better developer because of it. So I wanted to really make that point for this one. So last week I did this Twitter poll, and I wanted to find out, how do people feel after they leave a session at a conference, right? And I gave some choices there, and 60% said they were excited to try the subject. At least for me, it's the opposite. Most conference talks I go to, I'm number 4 there. So at least with this talk and talking about fun and brand, I want to fix this 30% so that 100% of the people, well, 90% according to this poll, 90% of the people walk away going, I want to try this tomorrow or as soon as I get home. And that is the goal. And to kind of, prove this theory, is yesterday I was supposed to be in Portugal speaking at NDC Porto, but unfortunately because of the pandemic I couldn't. So I did it virtually, and it was the first time I spoke at NDC. I was a little bit nervous because I've never spoken there before, and I was a little nervous because I usually don't do live sessions like this. I record things. But this is some tweets that I got afterwards, and this really helps me not only feel better about my talk, but that I actually reached people. I look for tweets right after my talk to see what people are saying. So let's talk about bringing the fun to your speaking. So the first thing I want to talk a little bit about with the next slides is, software engineering sessions don't need to be boring, right? Most are. And a lot of things that the guys have and lady talked about today kind of tell you why, monotone voice, looking at your computer, not engaging with the audience, all these things, right? make software engineering talks boring. And software engineering is not the most exciting thing in the world, but you can make it fun. And I try to really do that a lot in my talks. And because I've learned this the hard way as usual through the 26 years. So engage your audience. The other speakers today have talked about this. It's really important to engage your audience. And I'll talk a little bit about some tips that I do to try to engage my audience. But this is super important. So they walk away feeling good about the session and about you, and hopefully buy your book or come see you again. One thing I wrote down when I was doing this is talk to them, not at them, right? It's hard for me to explain that, I guess, but you want to talk to them in a welcoming way and not in a threatening way, or you must do this, or Java sucks. Oh wait, I say that. So you need to learn how to talk well to your audience. And be friendly and show the willingness to help. I think most people, especially my followers in India, know that, I am always willing to help them. I hang around in the halls. I hang around after the session. I hang around as much as I can to help people. That's why I'm there at the conference, right? I go to conferences to help people, to learn to be better software developers. That's why I'm there. So the whole time I'm there, that's my job, is to help you guys and listen to you. And one thing I do that I'm really, thankful that I'm a Microsoft MVP is, and this happened yesterday in my talk at NDC, where someone came to me with a code problem and said, Dave, I can't figure this out. Here's an example. It breaks, .NET is breaking on this. Can you help me? I test it, I see it breaking, and I go, you know what? I'm going to talk to the .NET runtime team on Monday and get them working on this. And so that's one thing I do at conferences is I write these things down and I bring them to the Microsoft teams up in Seattle. So just some of the things I've learned is I look at my audience a lot, and I'm trying to look at this tiny little camera, which is really weird for me to do because I'm an in-person speaker. I'm not a remote speaker like this. But if you've ever seen me at a session, I am constantly looking at the audience, right? I try to look at everybody depending on the size of the room. At CSharpCorner conference, it's really hard for me to do that because the room is so freaking huge, but other conferences, like I usually can do that. And, not only is this important to show that you're engaged with the audience, right? But it shows how they're engaging with you. And by the looks in their eyes or facial expressions, I quickly change my talk, or maybe talk more about one thing. Or if I know I sense the audience is more beginner, then I explain things a little better. But I can only know this by looking at them. And anyway, so looking at your audience the whole time is super important. And like Magnus said, don't look at the slides, right? Look at your audience. Unlike Magnus, I walk around the entire time, right? I clocked it once, and I walk about 3 miles in 1 hour when I'm in a live session. And this is great exercise, I guess. Help me lose 100 pounds. But I do this for a bunch of reasons, but the main, and I could talk about those, but I'm going to talk about the main one. So I actually learned this a long time ago when I went to a Microsoft conference and I saw a speaker do this. The speaker never stood at the computer. He never stood at the podium. He walked around the audience the entire time. And I thought that was the coolest thing because it kept me engaged with him. And so I do that now, right? I never stand at the computer. I never stand at the podium. I walk around the entire time. I walk up and down the audience. I walk around. I don't go behind the audience, but I walk around the entire time because I've found that this forces them to pay attention to me. right? And not use their cell phone, right? As soon as someone whips out their cell phone, the talk is over and you've lost them. So to me, walking around helps me keep them engaged. Oh, I guess I duplicated that. And I smile a lot. If you guys have seen me, I smile the entire time, pretty much. Not only because I'm having a good time, but I want the audience, to know that and feel good about, what I'm talking about. So I smile a lot, and I have some proof coming up of that. For those of you who haven't seen me, I play rock videos before my session. I started this a long time ago, and I started doing this for the audience because I wanted to get the audience into a different mode before they saw my session. And because, when people are sitting on their butts all day, it's hard to get them engaged. And so I started showing these rock videos before my session. And but I quickly found out that it was a way to get me in a different mood and get me excited, because when I see these videos, these are all my favorite groups like Rush. I rock out and start getting happy, and it starts getting me worked up. I have a routine before I talk, and this is part of my routine. Most conferences you go to, you don't get introduced. You just start your talk. I started these funny videos to introduce myself. And again, it's a way to engage the audience, get them laughing a little bit with these funny things that I come up with. And so we're all kind of on the same page when I start talking, especially with my rock and roll outfit and all that kind of stuff that you guys have seen in India. I throw guitar picks out at the audience. Again, this is a way not only to brand myself, but this is a way to make the audience pay attention, because, I actually found this out with my students at a university. If I threaten to throw things at them, they're going to pay attention. And so I do that. So all of you out there I've hit in the head with something, I apologize now publicly on YouTube. I try to keep things light. I tell jokes, a few, not too many. Don't tell too many jokes. But I found getting geeks to laugh is really hard. And but I try to do that. And again, it's to keep them engaged. Another thing I do to make it fun and keep them engaged is I bring swag to give away. I always have software, posters, mouse pads, guitar picks, stickers, magnets. All these things is mostly branding. But again, to keep the audience engaged and have them excited about the talk. So here's some proof of fun. All these pictures are pretty recent, and now I think my PowerPoint's going to die. Come on. Yep, I think my PowerPoint's going to die. Well, I'll keep talking while it's dying. But anyway, I have some pictures up here about the fun I have at conferences, to kind of show you proof that this works, at least for my branding, at least. Let me try to get this working again. Oh, there it goes. I don't know why PowerPoint likes to do autosaves when you're in presentation mode. So here's some proof of me speaking at different conferences around the world, Ukraine, India, America. And you can see in every one of these pretty much I'm smiling, or I look like I'm having fun. And the next deck is even better, the next slide at least. And you can see in all these I'm smiling, having fun, breaking guitars, engaging with my audience. In one picture there, you have the CSharpCorner team lifting me up in the air after I broke a guitar. Those of you who've come to India and watched me break guitar, I can't tell you just how much fun that is. because conferences won't let me do that here in America. So, so the next thing I want to talk about is branding a little bit. How much time do I have left? Well, I didn't start it, so I don't know. About 10 minutes, it looks like. So here's some things to think about for branding. You know, speaking is one of the best ways to find a new job, right? I can trace almost every job I've had in the software world back to speaking somehow, either at the university, at conferences, at user groups, at local companies, wherever I've spoken at a high school before. You know, this is the best way to find a job, really, because, you know, the mere fact that you're up there speaking in front of people gives you credibility. And it really, really helps you find jobs. And people walk up to me, you know, to find a job. I was at the CSharpCorner conference and someone walked up to me and goes, "Dave, we have to work together." You know, I was in India. So it's a really great way to find a job. Promote your projects, you know, GitHub, things like that, NuGet, whatever projects you're doing. It's a good way to promote things. Promote your books, of course. I use my talks to promote my books. If you're a Pluralsight author, it's a good way to push your Pluralsight. And like I said before, it's a great way to learn. Speaking is a fantastic way to learn. Those of you who have seen me speak before, you know, my slide decks are pretty crazy and crashes PowerPoint often. But again, I do that not only to create my brand, but to try to get, you know, people, you know, excited about what I'm talking about. And, you know, sometimes I go a little overboard with my animations because I'm bored and I'm playing around with After Effects or something. But, you know, I try to make interesting slides. And, you know, there's been many times when, you know, people have come up to me at conferences going, "What software are you using for your slides?" And I go, "PowerPoint." And they go, "That's not PowerPoint." And I go, "It is." So it's a great way to, again, brand, keep people excited. If you look at like news, I watch the news most of the day, they have moving things, you know, in the background and around the sides. But don't go too crazy. They shouldn't be too distracting. And I've done that a few times. You know, and I said before, this is a great way to like push things like my books. So here's like what I show at the beginning of my talk yesterday at NDC, because it was about code performance. And it's a way for me to push my book, get some people to buy my books, which some people have since yesterday. And of course, you guys know in India that, you know, all the profit from the print book of this goes to the Voice of Slum in India. So I usually spend like a minute or so talking about my visit to the Voice of Slum, because it was is a very moving experience. So here's my number one tip. I think I'm close to time, but I got a few more things to talk about. So here's my number one tip. And, you know, one thing I do, I just thought about, one thing I do in all of my sessions is there's one thing in my slide deck that I want people to pay attention to, one slide. And because I want them to bring that home with them or back to work with them when they leave the conference. So, and on my 2-hour talks, I have two things, but in 1 hour talk, I have one thing. So here's my number one tip. And here's the tip that I've never shared publicly ever before. And let's see what people say when I'm a little bit afraid to share it because I'm worried about what people are going to say. So here it is. You can't teach anyone anything in an hour or less. Flat out. It's impossible. You know, when I taught at a university, you know, I had 4.5 hours. And yes, in 4.5 hours, I can teach somebody something, but in 1 hour, you can't. And now most conference sessions are shrinking, 45 minutes, 30 minutes, 20 minutes. I don't know how you do sessions that small. Some conferences have gone to 45 minutes, and if I know they're doing that, I don't submit my talks anymore. I can't do an hour, a 45-minute talk or a 30-minute talk, even though this is a 30-minute talk. But I can't do them. And so there's one thing you have to remember what your job is. And this is what I found out a long time ago, what my job is in 1 hour. And this is it. The only thing you can do is get them excited about what you're speaking about. That's it. That to me is your job, is to get them excited about, Azure functions or AWS Lambdas or whatever the thing you're talking about. You want to excite them about that, so they go and learn on their own, because they're not going to learn in an hour talk, especially at a conference when they've been sitting on their butts for 8 hours. It doesn't work. So you need to get them excited about what you're talking about. And I can't really stress that enough. And that's why, I do some of these goofy things and the throwing things and the rock and roll gear and things like that, because I want to get them excited about what I talk about. And in most cases, you can do that. And in most cases, I do that. And not every conference I'm successful. That's just the way it is. Every city, every conference is different. I love going to India, and to the CSharpCorner conference, because, the geeks there are so warm and welcoming. And even though they're a bit more shy than Americans, they do come up and talk to you and ask good questions. And, that's my fun. If I could make a living doing just this, I would do it, but there's no money in this. So anyway, so get them excited. That's your number one thing. If you can do that in an hour, then you have succeeded, right? And as soon as I learned this, it just relieved a lot of stress on me, and allowed me to basically, over a number of years, create the brand that I am now. And .NET Dave and the rock and roll gear and all that branding stuff, that's .NET Dave. But, this is what helped me create all that. So, Encore. So, remember to always bring the passion and fun, right? I'm very passionate in my talks, and I try to be fun, and in most cases, it really does work for me. And, the last thing I want to leave you with is, what? If this shy introvert geek can learn how to speak, so can you, right? I had to force myself to speak because I did not want to do it. I hated it more than anything when I started learning how to speak. And so, if I can do it, then anybody can do it. So that's what I'm going to leave you with. And I'm really glad you all attended this. I hope you have some good questions. I was talking the whole time. I wasn't able to read the chat, but thanks a lot for attending. And, I hope to see you in India next year. Thanks.